Today was the bloodiest day of the entire year so far in Iraq. Two suicide bombers in separate cities killed at least 78 people and wounded 120 others. The bombers targeted a humanitarian food giveaway in one attack and a crowded restaurant filled with Iranian tourists in another. While we're on the subject of life during wartime, the news from Pakistan right now is in holy mackerel territory in a bad way. Remember that the Pakistani government did a deal with the Taliban in a place called Swat, the Swat Valley. The military agrees to stay in their barracks. The Taliban agrees to a truce. The court system shuts down. The Taliban get to impose Sharia law there. The thinking being that the Taliban would get what they want, but at least the rest of Pakistan would get peace? Not so much. That deal was signed 10 days ago, and now the Taliban have essentially taken over a neighboring district called Bunair. Bunair has about 1 million people. It's only 65 miles or so as the crow flies from Islamabad, from Pakistan's capital. Luckily, there is at least a mountain range in between them. Here's the reaction from Secretary of State Hillary Clinton before the House Foreign Affairs Committee yesterday.
I think that the Pakistani government is basically abdicating to the Taliban and to the extremists. We cannot underscore the seriousness of the existential threat posed to the state of Pakistan by the continuing advances now within hours of Islamabad.
The existential threat posed to the state of Pakistan. Meanwhile, what about the tens of thousands of American troops just one very porous border west of there in Afghanistan? Well, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee today heard dramatic testimony from Afghanistan veterans, including some who are very critical of Obama's plan for more troops and more commitment to the Afghanistan war. Here, for example, was former Marine Corporal Rick Reyes.
Because our mission was to capture suspected Taliban and had no successful way of being able to distinguish them, we had no other choice but to suspect the entire civilian population, innocent or not. At the end of it, we found that these dangerous missions resulted with very poor consequences by destroying innocent lives. We weren't fulfilling our objective of capturing terrorists, but instead creating enemies out of civilians.
Joining us now is NBC's chief foreign correspondent, Richard Engel. Richard, it's nice to see you in person. Thanks for being here.
It's a pleasure.
Where in the world has Richard Engel been recently?
I've been traveling a lot. I left New York New Year's Eve, or just after New Year's, and I've been to about 14 different countries since then. But most of my time is now being spent in Afghanistan and Pakistan. I just came from Baghdad a few days ago, but I'm heading back to Pakistan soon because of the unfolding situation there.
Well, let's start with Pakistan then. Can you give us a little perspective on what's going on up in the northwestern part of the country?
The basic problem is, if you get to use the map again, this area here, the border area, is Taliban country on both sides of the border. And so since the, I guess we could call it the U.S. invasion, since 9/11, you've seen a lot of Taliban moving across the border and moving deeper into Pakistan. Okay. So that's been the general thrust of the troops, particularly as American troops are in Afghanistan and not in Pakistan. So they've been getting further into what would be their own home territory. Then if you see the next map, it focuses in on, if they can switch to the next map.
Roll to the next map.
Roll to the next map. Otherwise, I'll do it myself. Okay, there we go. This shows the area that is particularly at risk right now. So if we've seen that a lot of the troops have been, a lot of the Pakistan in general has been moving this way. Yeah. 10 days ago, this agreement was put in place to give the Taliban control effectively in the Swat Valley, which is right there in the north. And the Swat Valley is considered like the Switzerland of Pakistan. It was a resort area, it's mountains, it was, people went there for the weekend to enjoy themselves. One of the best hotels in the whole country is there, owned by the Aga Khan. It's a resort area.
Does that actually mean that the roads are better there?
The roads are fine in Islamabad and in Swat. Pakistan in general has a good road network. Okay. The real problem with the roads is over in Afghanistan, where there are almost no roads at all. So it's covered by the Hindu Kush, and it is an impossible place to fight. After the Taliban violated the terms of their deal, the Taliban was supposed to just impose Sharia law, which is Islamic law. That really had dramatic consequences, because the government gave in to the Taliban. The government of Pakistan gave the Taliban what they want, and there's no way to really put that genie back in the bottle, because in the region, Islamic law, Sharia law, has such a positive connotation. It's associated with goodness, with divine law. So then how can the government of Pakistan tell its people, we're taking away divine law. It puts itself in an awkward situation. Then, just a few days ago, from the Swat Valley, the Taliban moved back and took over another area just to the south of there called Bunair, which is this yellow piece. And I think if there's another map that goes in a little bit closer, you can see how strategically important this area is, because from Bunair to Islamabad is really just 60, 70 miles. And Islamabad is the capital. So you have 60, 70 miles away an area that has been overrun by the Taliban. And the Pakistani government just sent in a few hundred police constables that are poorly paid and poorly armed to try and deal with them.
Is this an effort to overthrow, is there an overall effort to overthrow the Pakistani government? Is there going to be,
yes.
Are the Taliban attempting to circle Islamabad, to be able to make a raid on the capital?
The idea is not to necessarily make a raid on the capital. It is to impose Islamic law in the country, one piece at a time, one province at a time. They did it in Swat. They're doing it now in Bunair. Islamabad is a cosmopolitan city. Right. It is a false capital. It was purpose-built capital. So it doesn't really have a natural indigenous population. So you're not, I think having Islamic law imposed in Islamabad would be very unlikely. Mm-hmm. But you could have it in all of the different provinces and then make what happens in Islamabad.
This time last night, I was talking about yesterday's bloody, bloody day in Iraq. 88 people killed in suicide blasts. It was the deadliest attack in Iraq this year. Today, at least 60 more people were killed in 2 suicide bombings at Baghdad's most important Shiite shrine. Meanwhile, while we're on the subject of life during wartime, we also need to provide a follow-up on Pakistan. Today, there are mixed reports about whether the Taliban militants who had seized Bunair, an area about 60 miles from Pakistan's capital city, were leaving that region or staying put. The New York Times reports that the Taliban still remain in control of the area, and the Associated Press taped these Taliban guys today looking like they weren't going anywhere anytime soon. Take a look also at this map. This was created by the Long Wars Journal last week. The areas in red are the areas in the northwest region of Pakistan that are considered to be controlled by the Taliban. The areas in orange are contested between the Taliban and the government. The yellow spots have some Taliban influence, and the green, those are the areas controlled by the government. Scary, right? You want to know what's really scary? Even since this map was created last week, these green and yellow areas could already be changing color toward more Taliban-y colors. The mixed reports on Bunair today were in part due to a Taliban spokesperson saying that the militants were pulling out of that region. And yes, there is a Taliban spokesperson. He is the Ken Sunshine of Pakistan, but has a reputation for being about as well informed as Baghdad Bob was. Today he blamed the Taliban's anger on, quote, Western white women who take up arms and come from 20,000 miles away to fight against us here. Considering that the circumference of the Earth is only about 25,000 miles, and the distance from Fort Riley, Kansas to Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan, even if you round up, is less than 8,000 miles, I am guessing that he thinks we take a very zigzaggy journey to get to Afghanistan and Pakistan. At home in Washington, General David Petraeus, the commander of U.S. forces in Iraq and Afghanistan, the CENTCOM commander, testified before Congress today and was pressed on the deteriorating situation in the region.
The Taliban in particular will literally create conditions in which there is a high prospect of civilian casualties, disregarding the risk that they're putting the civilian population of a local area to by their actions.
In the midst of life during wartime and what is happening in American politics right now, it's starting to seem like the consensus about what to do in these multiple crisis zones is eroding right now. Joining us now is retired U.S. Army Colonel Douglas MacGregor. He's a decorated combat veteran who was an active duty officer and Pentagon advisor until 2004. Colonel MacGregor, it's really nice of you to make time to come on the show tonight. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Do you share my assessment that the consensus around what to do in Afghanistan right now is eroding, that there's starting to be a more spirited debate about America's role in that country?
Well, I hope so. It's very hard to tell because, quite frankly, this place is remote from the United States, and strategically in Afghanistan itself we don't have much really at stake. It's not terribly relevant. We act as though it is. It really isn't. The principal concern for the United States and for its allies today remains the nuclear arsenal inside Pakistan. We want to ensure that that is continually under guard and under the control of the Pakistani military. And thus far, that's been the case. If that should change for some reason, that becomes an international calamity, not just for us, for Russia, for India, for Iran, for the entire region, because we don't want those weapons to fall into the wrong hands. The question is, how do we prevent that? And I think that's the question that needs to be answered, not how many more troops do we send to Afghanistan to suppress this or that Muslim element or tribal organization that we don't like.
As the Taliban